Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth episode of my trip to the Northeast. And in this episode, we explore the beautiful state of Nagaland.
Good morning everyone. Good morning from Silchar. Today we have the longest stretch of the ride. So we have 290 kilometers to go today. This is all hilly and windy road, so it will take a lot of time. We have started at 7:30. ETA shows 3:30. Even if I can make it before sunset, it is fine. Let's go to Dimapur.
A short stretch of tarmac after starting from Dimapur was perfect, but soon enough, this smooth road turned into a broken one.
Been riding in this road condition for an hour now. Oh man, my tires are at the end of its life, and because of that, in dirt it is slipping and sliding a lot, especially the front. Just breaking traction like crazy. If I'm sitting down, the front wheel is slipping and sliding, and I'm able to cover only in first gear. If I'm standing, I'm able to cover at a second gear pace, but that too I have to give a lot of weight to the front. I have to lean a lot forward to keep traction, suspension and tires. These are what matters the most in off-road. And every time a truck goes by like this, there's a lot of dust following it, and the visibility becomes almost zero. This is a national highway, man, connecting Silchar to Haflam. Pathetic.
Just when the road started becoming worse and worse, for some reason, the bike started falling into neutral every time I shift from first to second gear. And during one of those moments, I lost momentum and this happened. I waited for a few minutes just to see whether anybody would pass by to help me out. Seeing signs of no one, I caught my breath and tried one time to lift the bike. And just like that, I was back up again. I had simply forgotten how light the KTM 390 Adventure is. Moments like this are when your bike's weight and your strength training comes in very handy. After a long stretch of broken roads, it was a relief to get good roads again.
So we have left the highway from Silchar to Guwahati, and now we have taken a deviation to Dimapur. So we reached Dimapur in Assam. It's the last town in Assam before we cross the border and get to Nagaland. So another 60 kilometers to go to Dimapur. Take another 1.5 to 2 hours. So before we head there, I thought we'll have lunch. Saw a nice cafe, go through the cafe, had a heavy lunch from there. Dimapur, I think I saw an Assam University campus here. Maybe because of the university and the students, the city looks a little happening.
I reached Dimapur close to sunset, so I checked into the hostel, took some good rest and called it a day.
Morning everyone. Day 16, of the ride. Today we'll be just roaming in and around Dimapur. When I visited the homestay owner told me to go here, Nagaland Zoological Park. I mean, I am not interested in zoos because first of all, I don't like animals being put in cages. Second of all, I've been to a lot of zoos, so was not really interested in it. But then she told me that this place has a lot of hornbills, and Nagaland is famous for hornbills, right? So I thought, let's go.
Just like any other zoo, the Nagaland Zoological Park also had a good collection of wild animals. I headed straight to the hornbill section as soon as I entered the zoological park. But on the way, there were all these animals on display, and since I had a lot of time in my hand for that particular day, I decided to have a closer look. These guys weren't happy seeing the tourists. They kept on making noise till we moved away from their enclosure. Now bear sure know the best way to spend a chilly weekend morning. Finally, I reached the hornbill enclosure. finally, after checking out the hornbills, I decided to head to the next destination for today.
It's still sad, man, like keeping all the birds in small cages for display. Anyways, next is Kachari Ruins, an archaeological site. I'm not sure about the details. Let's go there and find out.
The Kachari tribe is one of the earliest inhabitants of Dimapur. This site has the ruins of a fort which is believed to have been constructed around the 16th century AD. This fort is believed to have belonged to the Dimasa Kachari kingdom that once flourished in Dimapur. These mushroom-style pillars is still a matter of mystery to many historians. This peculiar architectural style is believed to have influence from the local and Mughal architectural styles. After roaming around the fort remains for some time, I decided to head to a hotel suggested by my homestay host to taste the Nagaland thali. This particular thali had a lot of dishes which is very unique to the Nagaland cuisine with meat and a few curries. Feeling a bit adventurous that day, I ordered a bowl of silkworm and decided to try that too. And to my surprise, it tastes much better than it looks. After the meal, I went to Hong Kong market to check it out and then back to the hostel to prepare for the next day of the trip.
Good morning, everyone. We are here to Kohima. So we are leaving the plains and ascending the hills. So we are going to Kigwema. It is like a little ahead of Kohima and it is closer to Dzukou Valley. It is 2 hours ride from Dimapur to Kigwema. Kohima town 4.4. There is Kohima and it is cold. Most disappointing part is it's a Sunday today. Unfortunately, because it is same like Aizol. Everybody goes to church, so everything is closed.
One of the hostel mates I met in Dimapur, Tavneet, also traveled to Kohima on the same day I left from Dimapur. And it so happened that we ended up staying in the same homestay in Kigwema. So we decided to visit the Naga Heritage Village and Dzukou Valley the next day together. The Kisama Heritage Village is one of the main venues where the annual Hornbill Festival happens. This heritage village houses models of morungs or villages belonging to the 17 ethnic groups of Nagaland. It is situated in Kigwema, which is 12 kilometers south of Kohima in Nagaland. These models display the essence of the different styles of villages belonging to these different ethnic groups in Nagaland. Traditionally, these morungs were like institutionalized dormitories where young men and women used to be housed and taught the different ways of the village by the elders of the village. They ceased to be the members of these institutions once they got married. These morungs are the places where traditional tribal art forms like music, dance, art were taught to the younger generation by the elders, along with subjects like moral and social duties, defense art forms, agriculture, and religion, along with many other things. The detailing in the woodwork and the art in each of these models looked amazing. During the Hornbill Festival, the Nagas, dressed in their traditional attire, usually demonstrate how they use these long drums for different purposes. Since we were there on a Sunday morning, the whole place was empty, so we could just take our sweet time and roam around and see all these places in detail. After roaming around the Naga Heritage Village, we went back to the homestay for lunch, freshened up, and went to the Mosen viewpoint to catch the sunset. As As the sun set behind those hills, we sat in that quaint little village of Kohima, just soaking in those views. There was a small post box kind of thing where we could leave a note to a stranger. It was filled with beautiful quotes written by people who were here. Unfortunately, there wasn't any paper left, so we couldn't leave a note. After spending some more time in the viewpoint, we headed back to the homestay to call it a day. The next day, we started out in a van arranged by our host in our homestay to get to the starting point of Dzukou Valley trek. On the way, we picked up a local guide who would guide us for the ascent. After an hour of bumpy ride, the driver left us at a starting point. The trek to Dzukou Valley is around 8 kilometers, of which the first 2 kilometers is a steep ascent. I am not a big fan of trekking in general, but since everyone told that Dzukou is a must-visit place, and since I had good company, I thought I'll give it a try. We reached the first half of the 2-kilometer ascent, but by then we had used up 90% of our energy. After taking a short break at the viewpoint, we continued the ascent. When we were about to complete the 2-kilometer ascent, we started getting the view of the valley below. Once we ascend the 2 kilometers, we reach a small shed where we took a break, had some food and water before we continued the 6-kilometer hike through the valley. After the break, we started hiking through the valley on flat grounds in between the tall bamboo grass. Even though the wind was cold, the sun was scorching us. But after a while, we got the first glimpse of the Dzukou Valley. The valley had endless hills covered in bamboo. 2 kilometers before we reached the top, the guide said that there is only one way ahead now, and he left us and headed back to the base. So once we said goodbye to him, we stopped to take a break and have some food and water before we continued ahead. After 3 hours of trekking, we finally made it to the top. But by then, unfortunately, I had severe migraine owing to hunger and sunlight. We were warned that we will not get food right away at the top since it's a weekday, so we carried cup noodles and snacks. We made that our lunch, and then I crashed at the dormitory till sunset due to the headache. As the sun was about to set, Tavneet woke me up to catch the view, and man, it was breathtaking. By then, few more hikers had also arrived and the kitchen became functional. So we ordered chai and just spent some time there soaking in this spectacular view of the sunset over the Dzukou Valley. That night in Dzukou Valley was the most horrible night that I had in the entire Northeast trip. The dormitory that we were staying in was full of rats which kept crawling over us and biting us throughout the night. In the middle of the night, we had to wake up, go outside, find empty tents just to take shelter in it. The temperatures dropped to near zero. The water in our bottles froze and my headache was at its all-time worst. And somehow we had to survive the night. But the next day we woke up to ice on the ground and a spectacular sunrise over the Dzukou Valley. The frozen dew on the bamboo on the hills looked like spider webs. There was a helipad nearby to which you could hike to get a better view. But we both were fed up of the whole experience that all we wanted to do was head back. So after having a quick cup of chai, we started to descend the Dzukou viewpoint. The morning view of the Dzukou Valley was breathtaking. We were told that we came in the wrong time because Dzukou is at its peak beauty during the monsoons. These rolling hills of Dzukou Valley is home to the Dzukou lily and many other flowering species which you get to see only during the summers. Since we went during the winter, it mostly looked barren. Since hiring a guide was very expensive, we hired the guide only on the first day while we ascended the Dzukou Valley. So while we were on the way to the top, I was tracking the steps on my Apple Watch since there is no maps or network coverage here. This came in very handy as we could retrace the steps back to the base point. After covering the 6 kilometers of flat track, we reached the viewpoint from where we needed to descend 2 kilometers before we reached the base. We took a quick break to have some snacks and water before we made the final move back to the homestay. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. See you in the next one where we explore the state of Manipur.